Sekin.
Ovozingizni qo'shib oling, ovozingizni.
Assalomu alaykum. Bugungi tadbir ishtirokchilari hamda ekspertlar. Finlandiya tajribasini o'rganishga mo'ljallangan tizimli ravishda amalga oshirilayotgan vebinarlarimizning navbatdagisida sizlarni barchangizni xush ko'rdik. Bugungi seminarimizda Finlandiya tajribasi asosida umumta'lim fanlarini o'qitish malaka va ko'nikmalarini o'rganish uchun yig'ildik. Bugungi tadbirimizni rasman kirish so'zi bilan ochish uchun ilk kirish so'zini Vazirlar Mahkamasi huzuridagi ta'lim sifatini nazorat qilish davlat inspeksiyasi rahbari Toshkenbayev Ulug'bek Nigmatovichga beriladi. Marhamat Ulug'bek Nigmatovich, so'z sizga.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir ishtirokchilari, hurmatli Alisher Rahmatullayevich, janob Yari Lavonen, Rayli Hilden xonim, avvalo bugungi vebinarda ishtirok etayotganingiz uchun sizlarga ta'lim inspeksiya va shaxsan o'z nomidan chuqur minnatdorchilik bildiraman. Bugun men Surxondaryo viloyatidan qatnashyapman. Xabaringiz bor, so'nggi yillarda yurtimizda ta'lim tizimini isloh qilish masalasi davlat siyosatida dolzarb va muhim ahamiyat kasb etmoqda. Ayniqsa O'zbekistonda ta'lim tizimini modernizatsiyalash, rivojlangan mamlakatlarning eng yaxshi tajribalarini va ilg'or pedagogik texnologiyalarni o'rganish va qo'llash asosida amalga oshirilib kelinmoqda. Muhtaram Prezidentimizning joriy yilning 30-oktyabrdagi O'zbekistonning yangi taraqqiyot davrida ta'lim, tarbiya va ilm-fan sohalarini rivojlantirish chora-tadbirlariga bag'ishlangan ma'ruzalarda biz o'qitish metodikasini o'zgartirmas ekanmiz, ta'lim sifati haqida gap bo'lishi mumkin emas deb ta'kidlaganlar. Boisi hozirgi kun o'qituvchisi nafaqat bilim manbai, balki darsni tashkil etuvchi va boshqaruvchi, o'quvchini mustaqil ta'limga yo'naltira oluvchi shaxs bo'lishi kerak. Ma'lumki, O'zbekiston ilk marotaba xalqaro baholash tizimlarida ishtirok etishga tayyorgarlik ko'rmoqda. Xususan, PISA tadqiqoti bizdan ijodkor, nostandart fikrlaydigan va muammoni tadqiq eta oladigan ko'nikmalarni talab etyapti. Bu ko'nikmalarni o'quvchilarga faqat o'qituvchilar bera oladi. Bu esa oliy ta'lim tashkilotlari oldiga ijodkor, tadqiqot qila olish ko'nikmasiga ega bo'lgan, o'z ustida ishlaydigan va fanni chuqur biladigan o'qituvchi tayyorlash vazifasi qo'ymoqda. Jumladan, o'qituvchilarni tayyorlash va malakasini oshirish yagona uzluksiz tizimga aylantirildi. Bundan buyon o'qituvchining kasbiy tayyorgarligiga tashxis qo'yiladi. Tashxis natijasi asosida uning kasbiy rivojlanish trayektoriyasi ishlab chiqiladi va shu asosda o'qituvchi malakasini oshiradi. Malaka oshirish imkoniyatlarini kengaytirish va sog'lom raqobat muhitini shakllantirish maqsadida ilk bor sohaga xususiy sektor ham jalb etiladi. Mana hozirgi kunda biza mana 7-viloyatda hududda hozir bayramdan keyin, yangi yildan keyin biza tashrif buyuryapmiz. Asosiy maqsad o'sha xalq ta'lim tizimida, umuman uzluksiz ta'lim tizimida yig'ilgan muammolarni muhokama qilish va hozirgi yuqorida aytgan masalani, ya'ni o'qituvchilarni malaka oshirish, qayta tayyorlash tizimini va pedagog kadrlarni tayyorlash tizimini yanada takomillashtirish bo'yicha joylardan biza tegishli fikrlarni va takliflarni olyapmiz. Xalq ta'limi tizimini 2030-yilgacha rivojlantirish konsepsiyasida PISA xalqaro o'quvchilarni baholash dasturi reytingida O'zbekistonning 2030-yilga kelib 30 ta ilg'or mamlakatlar qatoriga kirishga erishish maqsadi ko'zda tutilgan. Ushbu vazifalarga asosan ta'lim inspeksiyasi hamda tegishli vazirlik va idoralar bilan hamkorlikda xalqaro tadqiqotlarga tayyorgarlik ishlari reja asosida olib borilmoqda. Prezidentimizning 2020-yil 6-noyabrdagi qarorlarga 48-84 qarori bilan ta'lim-tarbiya va ilm-fan sohalarini yanada takomillashtirishga qaratilgan kompleks chora-tadbirlar dasturi tasdiqlangan. Ushbu ilovaning 4-bandiga ko'ra mazkur vazifalar ijrosini ta'minlash aynan Finlyandiya ta'lim tajribasini o'rgangan holda va Finlyandiya ekspertlari bilan hamkorlikda amalga oshirilishi belgilangan. Bu borada ta'lim inspeksiyasi tomonidan o'qituvchilarni tayyorlash, o'quv dasturlarini ishlab chiqish va o'zbekligini ta'minlash bo'yicha Finlyandiya tajribasi o'rganilmoqda. Pedagogika oliy ta'lim muassasalarida o'qitish metodikasini Finlyandiya tajribasi asosida qayta ko'rib chiqish, bitiruvchilarning tayyorgarlik darajasini oshirishni ta'minlash bo'yicha ishlar olib borilmoqda. Xususan, ta'lim sifatini nazorat qilish davlat inspeksiyasi maktabgacha ta'lim, xalq ta'limi va oliy ta'lim vazirliklari bilan hamkorlikda 21 fandan ta'limning barcha bosqichlaridan 350 tadan ortiq tajribali ekspertlarni jalb qilgan holda amaldagi o'quv dasturlarini tahlil qilish va takomillashtirish ishlarini bajarmoqda. Ishchi guruh a'zolari tomonidan uzluksiz ta'lim tizimi uchun konsepsiyalar hamda o'quv dasturlari tayyorlanib, ta'lim inspeksiyasi portaliga joylashtirildi. Konsepsiyalar va o'quv dasturlari loyihalariga 2,5 mingdan ortiq takliflar bizlarga tushgan. Ekspert guruhi a'zolari tomonidan amaldagi o'quv dasturlarini tahlil qilish natijasida barcha fanlardan ma'ruzalar o'zbilligi, takroriyligi nuqtai nazardan qiyosiy jadvallar tayyorlandi. Bu kabi tizimli va keng qo'lamli maqsadlarni amalga oshirishda bizga yaqindan va beminnat ko'mak berib kelayotgan faxriy konsulimiz Alisher Jo'rayevga, professorlarimiz janob Lavonen va Hilden xonimlarga o'zimizning chuqur va samimiy minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. Umid qilamizki, kelajakda sizlar bilan hamkorlikda ta'lim tizimining boshqa muhim bo'g'inlari, o'quv dasturlarini takomillashtirish, darsliklarni yaratish, pedagoglar malakasini oshirish, innovatsion pedagogik metodlarni takomillashtirish va tatbiq qilish kabi ko'plab yo'nalishlarda keng qo'llamli ishlarni amalga oshiramiz. Sizlarning bu borada bebaho yordamingiz va qo'llab-quvvatlashingiz yuksak, bizlar tomonidan yuksak qadrlanadi. E'tiborli uchun rahmat, sog' bo'linglar. Seminarni ishiga muvaffaqiyatlar tilayman.
Rahmat Ulug'bek Nigmatovich, hozirgi kunda hukumat topshirig'iga ko'ra respublikamizni chekka olis viloyatlarida xizmat safarida bo'lishingizga qaramasdan bugungi kun ushbu tadbirni nechog'lik muhim ekanligini inobatga olib faol ishtirokingiz uchun va mazkur yo'nalishda amalga oshirilayotgan ishlar haqida bergan batafsil ma'lumotlaringiz uchun o'z minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. Rahmat. Navbatdagi kirish so'z Finlandiyaning O'zbekistondagi faxriy konsuli Alisher Jo'rayev Rahmatullayevichga beriladi. Marhamat, Alisher Rahmatullayevich, so'z sizga.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli Ulug'bek Nigmatovich, professor Lavonen, hurmatli maktab direktorlari va barcha qatnashchilar. Katta rahmat bu juda muhim tadbirga taklif etganingiz uchun. O'ylayman bu davlat ta'lim inspeksiyasini oktyabr oyidan beri Finlandiya bilan ta'lim sohasida o'rnatib borayotgan hamkorligi hamda ushbu davlatning yetakchi tajribasini O'zbekistonga olib kelish bo'yicha qilayotgan sa'y-harakatlarining bu davomiy bir qismi deb o'ylayman va bu juda ham muhim tadbirligini ta'kidlab o'tmoqchimanki, chunki hozirgacha mana ta'lim inspeksiyasini tashabbusi bilan biz Tashqi ishlar vazirligi hamda Finlyandiyaning qator tashkilotlari bilan birgalikda bir nechta seminarlar, vebinarlar hamda uchrashuvlar o'tkazib keldik. Bunda hurmatli Ulug'bek Nigmatovich ta'kidlaganlaridek, Finlyandiyaning bir qator universitetlari ham beminnat o'z hissalarini qo'shib kelmoqdalar. Ayniqsa dunyodagi yetakchi universitetlardan biri bo'lgan, ya'ni dunyodagi 100 ta eng yetakchi universitetlar qatoriga kirgan Helsinki universitetini professori Yari Lavonin ham o'zini mana beminnat yordamini ko'rsatib, bizga bir necha seminarlar tashkil qilib berib, bundan tashqari hozirda yangi loyihalar uchun hujjatlar tayyorlashga yordam bermoqdalar. Yana bir narsani aytib o'tmoqchimanki, biz ta'lim inspeksiyasidan mana shu Finlyandiya va O'zbekiston o'rtasida ta'lim sohasida maqsad qilib qo'yilgan hamkorlikni amalga oshirishdagi sa'y-harakatlari hamda butun kuchli ko'rsatayotgan yordamlaridan juda minnatdormiz. Chunki bularni yordamida mana biz dekabr oyini 12-sanasida Navoiy viloyati hokimiyati hamda Finlyandiyaning Lappeenranta regioni hamda mana Tashqi ishlar vazirligi, ta'lim inspeksiyasi birgalikda juda bir muhim tadbir o'tkazib, mana shu olib borilayotgan ta'lim sohasidagi intilishlarni praktik darajaga ko'tarish bo'yicha bir juda yaxshi natijaga erishdik. Ya'ni Finlyandiya tarafi O'zbekistonga 20 ta o'rin ajratdi. Litsey talabalarini Finlyandiya litseylarida grant asosida o'qishi uchun. Bu yerda men aytib o'tishim kerak, boshqa tashkilotlar bilan bir qatorda ta'lim inspeksiyasini roli juda muhim, chunki bu yerda o'sha Fin tarafi ta'lim inspeksiyasini olib borayotgan ishlaridan, bularni ko'rsatayotgan katta yordamlaridan juda xursand. Shuning uchun mana shu berilgan 20 ta o'rin pilot tarzida Navoiy viloyati va Toshkent shahrida amalga oshirilmoqda hozir. Biz mana kuni kecha Navoiy viloyati Zarafshon shahri hokimiyatini kuchli qo'llab-quvvatlashi asosida bir tadbir o'tkazdik. Ya'ni o'sha berilayotgan Zarafshon shahriga berilayotgan 10 ta o'rin bo'yicha barcha ota-onalar bilan seminar, ya'ni webinar shaklidagi seminar o'tkazib, Finlyandiya tarafidan bu loyiha to'liq tushuntirib berildi. Hozirda mana shu Zarafshon hokimiyati hamda Toshkent shahrida pilot tarzda Toshkent davlat iqtisodiyot universiteti qarshidagi litsey tanlab olingan. Mana shu ikki tashkilot ko'magida Finlyandiyadan 2 ta fin tili o'qituvchisi ham tanlov asosida tanlab olindi va ular mart oyining 1-sanasiga qadar O'zbekistonga yetib kelishi kutilmoqda va bu o'qituvchilar mana fin tilini Zarafshon shahrida hamda Toshkent shahrida amaliy o'qitishni boshlashadi. Bu birinchidan juda ham mana bu olib borilayotgan islohotlarni amaliy tarafini kuchaytirishga yordam beradi, chunki bu o'qituvchilar fin tilini o'qitish bilan bir vaqtda mana shu ikki shahardagi tillarni o'rgatayotgan o'qituvchilarga ham o'zini amaliy yordamlarini berishadi. Bundan tashqari bizni mana shu bu yil pilot tarzda yuboriladigan 20 ta o'zbekistonlik yosh qizlar borib Finlyandiyaning yetakchi litseylarida bilim olib, u yerda qanday ta'lim berilayotganini o'rganishadi va kelajakda bu pilot loyihani muvaffaqiyati o'laroq kelgusi yilda biz o'nlab emas, balki yuzlab o'zbekistonlik talantli yosh yigit qizlarga bu imkoniyatni yaratishni rejalashtiryapmiz va bunda biz yana bir bor mana shu mahalliy hokimiyatlar, mahalliy universitetlar va hamda albatta O'zbekiston Respublikasi ta'lim inspeksiyasini juda katta yordami va ko'magiga ehtiyojimiz bor. O'ylayman, birgalikda bu qilayotgan ishlarimiz davlatimiz rahbari bergan bizga qo'ygan vazifalarni oqilona va izchil amalga oshirishimizda eng muhim omil bo'lib xizmat qiladi deb o'ylayman. O'ylayman, bugungi tadbir hamma uchun juda ham foydali bo'ladi. O'sha amaliy ko'nikmalar olishga hamda mana bu Helsinki universitetini professori bo'lmish professor Yari Lavonindan to'g'ridan to'g'ri amaliy bilimlarni olishga hamda dunyo tan olgan bu professorni yordamidan yanada nima deydi, yanada oqilona, yanada yaxshiroq foydalanishimiz uchun bir imkoniyat deb o'ylayman. Hammaga katta rahmat yana bir bor. Albatta Finlyandiyaning O'zbekistondagi faxriy konsulligi hamma vaqt haftasiga 7 kun, kunda 24 soat o'zini ko'magini berishga tayyor. Mana shu olib borilayotgan ta'lim bo'yicha sa'y-harakatlarga o'z hissasini qo'shish uchun. Yana bir bor katta rahmat.
Rahmat Alisher Jo'rayevich. Finlandiya bilan yaqindan, ayniqsa ta'lim sohasidagi hamkorlikni yanada kuchaytirish va rivojlantirish yo'nalishida olib borayotgan sa'y-harakatlaringizni yuksak qadrlaymiz. Ayniqsa Finlandiyadan juda ham yuqori salohiyatli ekspertlarni jalb qilishda. O'zingiz ta'kidlab o'tganingizdek, O'zbekiston o'quvchilarini Finlandiyada ta'lim olish jarayonlarini tashkil etishdagi amaliy yordamlaringiz alohida e'tirofga loyiq. Bu boradagi mehnatlaringizda, mashaqqatlaringizda va ishlaringizda yanada ulkan muvaffaqiyatlar tilab qolamiz. Navbatdagi ma'ruza, ya'ni kun tartibiga ko'ra bugungi tadbirimizning asosiy qismiga o'tamiz. Ilk ma'ruza tabiiy fanlarni o'qitishda Finlandiya tajribasi deb nomlanadi. Uni bizga Helsinki universiteti professori janob Yari Lavovin taqdim etadilar. Marhamat Yari Lavovin, so'z sizga. Mr. Lavovin, over to you. Please share your screen.
Just a minute, so I was already sharing it, but now I start it again.
You need to relaunch your presentation in order to demonstrate again.
Just a minute. It is slowly. So I have to make it in an ordinary way. Okay, now I get the possibility to share it. Once again. I have to take away my second screen, and are you now? Are you now able to see the screen?
Now it's fine. Now it's fine.
Okay, good, because I have two screens and it makes some difficulties. Anyway, so dear experts in education in Uzbekistan, it's my great honor to introduce Finnish curriculum thinking and shortly also teach education with my colleagues. Raili Hilden and also Arto Kallioniemi is participating in this meeting. In the opening speech, the director of State Inspectorate emphasized that development of the curriculum and also the training of teachers are important in making the shift in education. So I totally agree, and now I will introduce some ideas from the Finnish practices in this field, and I will focus to the science education. However, I have first some couple of general slides in order a little bit contextualize my presentation. So this is making a little bit contrasting between the Finnish approach for curriculum and some Anglo-Saxon models. So in Finland, we emphasize in curriculum broad aims for teaching and learning. And the generic competencies or 21st century competencies are also emphasized in our curriculum. And then we think that teachers who are professionals in education, they are able to implement those ideas in their classrooms. So teachers have autonomy in the implementation of those ideas. So we avoid detailed description of the learning outcomes because they somehow restrict the teacher's autonomy, and teachers are focusing then to the more detailed topics, not to the kind of competencies that they have to support students to learn. In Finnish education, the important level is school level. Teachers are responsible for planning and assessing the student learning. And we are assessing the learning process and the outcome. And if you have the detailed description of the learning outcomes in your curriculum, then it's quite common that there is a state level heavy testing, and the testing is guiding actually very much what the teachers are doing in the classroom. If the tests are measuring the things that students should memorize, then the teachers are focusing to the support learning memorize things. So this is a starting slide and a little bit contrasting the things, but we are here in the right-hand side of the slide. So we have made recently the curriculum change. However, in Finland, the change is not dramatic. It is a kind of continuous development of the curriculum. Anyway, in 2016, the primary schools and lower secondary schools start to use the new curriculum. And next August, the upper secondary schools are starting to use the new curriculum. In the process, we were preparing the new curriculum. We were heavily discussing what are the challenges of education and challenges in our society and also in the whole world, and especially in the working life. We were asking that what type of competencies will be needed now and in future. And it's not enough that we are discussing about the competencies. We should also discuss that what kind of practices at school produce these competencies, and how the change, if we are willing to emphasize the broad competencies, generic competencies, how we can support teachers to make the switch to that orientation. And that's why we ask also what kind of competencies teachers need in order to promote learning for future and how they are supported in this learning from these competencies. And this was the reason that in Finland, at the same time, we have the planning of the new curriculum. We were also planning new teacher education development program, which was introducing the new ideas to the teacher educators at different universities. So we were discussing about the changing world. People are doing nowadays many things with the digital tools and through the internet. Shopping and bank services are used through the internet. Even the news in newspapers are made automatically through the artificial intelligence. In agriculture, there are also new ways to organize things. So it has changed a lot in the world. And according to OECD, 14% of the current jobs are highly automated, and 23% of the jobs are changed tomorrow or even now. And the Oxford University researchers have said that half of the current jobs will vanish in the next 25 years. So, and new jobs are coming, but we do not even know what they are. So the world is changing now. So what to do in education in order to prepare young generation to the new world? And we were asking in our curriculum work that are the students ready for labor market? There are ready answers in the world. Many organizations like UNESCO, OECD, European Union have outlined what are the key competencies the students should learn at school. there is variation how these competencies are described. For example, the UNESCO is emphasizing good life for people. So it is more individual oriented and more general UNESCO opinion. OECD is of course looking the economic growth of the member states. So the ability to meet complex demands. And society and individuals are in the focus of the OECD, the second model. At the same time, the OECD was developing its first model for 21st century competencies. The PISA testing was started. And actually, the PISA framework is also a kind of model of the competencies students should learn at school. According to PISA framework, students should have the ability and willingness to use knowledge while asking questions and plan things and make evidence-based conclusions, explain phenomena. They are actually the science PISA aims or competencies. European Union is emphasizing employability of the people in Europe, and OECD new model, the learning compass, it is emphasizing the practical and physical skill, cognitive and metacognitive skills, social and emotional skills. So these are the ready models, but of course, in a country, we should have a heavy discussion how we emphasize these ideas coming outside, how we take our own context into account. The latest model of the OECD is emphasizing the basic competencies, know what and know how. And this is the idea that students should learn at school to use knowledge while they are engaging in problem solving. That is one area of competencies. Cognitive and metacognitive skills are a second area, critical and creative thinking, and the social and emotional skills. So this is quite nice model, and I can easily see myself that this curriculum is very much emphasizing these new ideas of the OECD Learning Compass to 2030. And also our new teacher education strategy is emphasizing these ideas. Of course, we have made local interpretations of these ideas. This is actually the list of we call them transversal competencies in our curriculum. And I have used these colors and this multiliteracy and ICT competence, which are emphasized in our curriculum. They are very close to these basic competencies. These thinking and learning to learn skills, they are close to cognitive and metacognitive. And interaction, communication, taking care of him or herself, they are close to these emotional skills. So you can easily recognize how the new descriptions are met, these international frameworks. I think this kind of exercises should be done, that when you are planning your new curriculum, you should somehow make the comparison with the ideas coming outside your own country. That is something we have done in Finland. This is my last kind of comprehensive slide, that then I switch more to the science, because science is my area. But I would like to emphasize that it's also important to discuss how we allocate lesson hours to different school subjects. Even the all school subjects are emphasizing use of knowledge in different situations. It is also important to discuss what kind of knowledge students need and the subject-specific practices. So the languages are important in a small country. Finnish language are taught only by 5.5 million, so we need foreign languages. And of course, the mother language is important because children are learning to think with that language, and it's important for learning. So languages, we have 1/3 of the lesson hours. Then we have mathematics, science, history, and civil kind of subject, and on ethics. And then we have these art subjects. So we are emphasizing all areas of human being in our curriculum. And now I will focus to this science. So science subjects it's about 1/5 or 1/6 of the lesson hours in our schools. So these numbers are total numbers of lesson hour. Lesson hour is if you have 1 hour the whole year. Okay, let's have a look for science curriculum. And my first slide is asking what is new in Finnish science curriculum. The new curriculum is emphasizing the disciplinary core ideas. There is a huge amount of concepts and ideas in science. In order to have enough space for practicing those competencies that are important, we are not able to take all the ideas we have had in curriculum. We have to reduce the number of concepts, number of ideas we have in curriculum. And we have to recognize what are important, which ideas have explanatory power, which are generative and relevant for students. And then second, we are emphasizing the scientific practices. Students should learn scientific practices which are similar to scientists, what they are doing. They are asking relevant questions. They are planning investigations. They are collecting data. They are making evidence-based conclusions. We are also emphasizing engineering practices, use of knowledge in design situation, use of knowledge in problem-solving situations. So these core ideas and practices, they are together. You are not able to learn ideas without practices, and practices, they doesn't mean anything if you are not combining the core ideas to practices. And then we are emphasizing students' active role in learning and in collaboration. And then what is the novel idea in our new curriculum is that we are integrating transversal competencies to science aims, science objectives in the curriculum. These are the practices I mentioned. So the practices are the way scientists and engineering are studying things and designing environment, asking questions, making definition to the problems, and so on, analyzing and interpreting data. They are important competencies, but not without the core ideas. They are working together. And then if I take a look in our new curriculum, how we have making a kind of classification of the aims. First, we are having aims related to the meaning, value, and attitudes. So science is important for all citizens in everyday life, but it is also important for those who are orienting to the scientific field, technical field, healthcare. They need science. So it is both for everybody, but also those specialists. And that's why we have to discuss about the meaning, values, and attitudes related to science. The research skills are, in Finland, we call them, if we use the Finnish terminology, we call research skills, but they are the same as scientific practices, which is more international term. And then use of knowledge, use of physics knowledge, use of chemistry knowledge. If I compare this kind of big idea in our curriculum, it is quite close to the Australia or United States, which are strong countries in science. In Australia, they emphasize understanding scientific knowledge, and United States use of knowledge. In Australia, scientific inquiry, US scientific practices, and science and society is also important in both in Australia. So science and society, it is here meaning, values, and attitudes. So it is not something that other countries is not having. Our curriculum is very close to the international common understanding of the curriculum. And then the content areas, you can see that we have reduced traditional content areas. For example, in physics, there is only the interaction and motion and electricity. They are emphasized. And there is space for inquiry, own life, physics and society, physics shaping the world view. So these are the contents, and in chemistry, they are quite similar. So you have to think carefully what are the contents in order to have enough time for practicing the practices, scientific and engineering practices. And the transversal competencies, they are common for all school subjects. And this is the list of Finnish transversal competencies. I have here on the right-hand corner what is the new OECD learning compass, and I already demonstrated that these transversal competencies, they are very close to this OECD thinking. But we have named them a little bit different way, and this is the history of education and Finnish culture and also the context in where we are living. They have influenced how we have given the names. Actually, the names are very close to the European Union called key competencies. So many terms, so many interpretation of the competencies are all over the world. It is challenging to navigate in the world, but anyway, this is our own interpretation. Thinking and learning to learn. So critical thinking, creative thinking, learning to learn is important. Use of metacognition in learning, cultural competence, self-care and everyday management, multiliteracy, and so on. This is the way how the curriculum is introduced to the teachers. There are this kind of competencies or skills, and then there is a content areas which I introduce, and there are the transversal competencies. So when teacher is aiming to support students to learn, for example, this guide pupils to use his or her competence in chemistry in building a sustainable future and evaluate his or her personal choices in terms of sustainable use of natural resources, then he can think that it could be selected all those core idea areas, and the transversal competencies are recommended that the self-care and everyday management are connected to this type of discussion, and participation, influence, and building a sustainable future. So this is the way how we emphasize that teachers should think the core ideas, the competencies, and generic competencies. This is something everyone is doing now or recently have done. I have seen many curriculum in Europe, and in some countries, they are just introducing these core transversal competencies. But there is not a clear link to the content and competencies in the subject. So it is challenging for countries to make a clear link between the things. And also for a teacher, it's really challenging to navigate in this kind of complex world, and teachers need certainly support. That is the reason why in Finland we are also monitoring how teachers are able to adopt the new ideas. And recently our National Institute for Evaluation called KARVI, they made a kind of follow-up study how teachers have been implementing these ideas to their classrooms. And according to this follow-up study, teachers were quite well taking the new ideas of the transversal competencies to their classrooms. There are also practical guidelines that there should be kind of specific weeks when teachers are emphasizing them, and many practical solutions how teachers are supporting. And then here is another example of the curriculum in chemistry, and for example this competence area 05. Teachers should encourage pupils to formulate questions about the studied phenomena and further develop the questions to serve as a basis for research and other activities. These are the content areas, and thinking and learning to learn, and also the participation, influence, and building a sustainable future could be combined to this idea. We can also analyze the Finnish science curriculum from the PISA point of view. I can easily see that asking questions, planning something, experiments, process, interpret, and present data, research process is important, guide pupils use information. So I have used different colors, And these different colors are emphasizing different areas in the PISA framework. And here are important models are important for describing something. You should learn to evaluate different sources of information and apply the knowledge. So it's very challenging to take into account those general frameworks, also the PISA framework, which is in science, is a very nice framework. So this is our solution, and these are other examples. So if I then compare the Finnish idea to the international PISA idea, I can give you the meaning for those colors I have used. So in a similar way than Finnish curriculum, the international PISA, OECD PISA framework is emphasizing the core ideas of knowledge. Knowledge about the subject and knowledge about the science, both views to the knowledge. And the PISA is emphasizing a lot about attitudes. And actually, you have to have knowledge, but that's not enough. You have to have willingness to use that knowledge while you engage certain type of practices or competencies. Learn those competencies. And here are the competencies. So you need knowledge, you need attitude to ask questions, identify issues, draw evidence, and explain phenomena. And this is not enough. You have to be able to use these competencies in different situations. Personal level, local level, global level. Or you can actually, PISA is introducing many contexts where you should be able to use the knowledge. So actually this picture, which is international, you can easily see that Finnish curriculum met these international views. So use of knowledge while identifying, making evidence-based conclusions and explain in different contexts. So there are so many views you have to think while you are making the local curriculum. Not copy directly ideas. You have to have brainstorming and contextualize and so on. So we are not copying PISA, we are not copying OECD or European Union. We are interpreting them and localizing them. Yes. Sorry? Okay, that's fine. So you mentioned the director of the inspectorate mentioned that you are aiming to also plan the learning materials and learning environments. I'm sure it is important. But what is more important, teachers have to learn new pedagogical approaches, how to implement the ideas to the classrooms. In Finland, our university has been collaborating with schools and teachers, and we have been planning together project-based learning approaches to science. So I think even more important is the way how we are teaching science than the textbooks which are used in science teaching. Both are needed. Of course, I'm not saying that one is more important, one is less important, but the approaches are important. The project-based learning, there are many interpretations. But how we understand project-based learning, it is very much according to the curriculum aims we are guiding students to project. The project-based learning in science is focusing on making sense of phenomena or designing solutions to the problems. These both views are needed in project-based learning. So, according to the learning science research, now we have to take ideas from the research in order to understand the project-based learning. So, how to engage students in learning knowledge and practices? We should put students to the center. Students should follow the scientific and engineering practices. Social interaction is important. And artifacts. In a project, you are constructing an artifact. For example, a scientific model. They are important, and of course, the use of digital tools, technology is important. So this is what the learning science research is telling about human learning in the context of science. All those 5 views to the learning activity is important. And of course, the contextualization and scaffolding are important in learning. This is the simple description of the project-based learning. You are typically having a contextualizing driving question. It is very much focusing to the curriculum aims. Students learn or participate in authentic situated inquiry. Following the driving question, they are active in practices, they are active in collaboration, they are active in knowledge construction, they are creating artifacts which are according to the driving question, and teacher is scaffolding, and formative assessment is used. And there is a concrete outcome, for example, the scientific model. So this is one example how we can support students to learn those generic competencies needed in 21st century. It is not easy. It needs time. We have made many iterations with the teachers. We have support them to learn how to organize this type of activities in science classroom. If you are just giving information that is not developing the competencies, you should push students to be active in learning. And project-based learning is one pedagogical model. There are many models. This is not the only one. One model that is guiding students to learn those competencies the curriculum is emphasizing. Students are planning. They are asking questions. They are making investigations. They are analyzing, interpreting data. They are communicating. It's really important that students are communicating to each other, learning in collaboration. I'm coming to the end of my short presentation. So I am afraid that there are so many views from to Finnish curriculum and teachers, and that it's quite challenging to get the ideas, but I try to summarize. So in Finland, while we have been designing the science curriculum, we have taken ideas from the OECD, European Union, UNESCO, from other countries, but never copy anything, interpret the ideas and contextualize the ideas. So this OECD Learning Compass is one quite nice model behind curriculum thinking. And second, the PISA framework is also a nice framework, but of course it is not clever to just take as it is, copy, but you can, I think the basic idea is excellent. You need to learn how to use knowledge, science knowledge, also knowledge about science. You have to have motivation, interest to engage in those competencies which are important in science. Identify issues, draw evidence-based conclusions, explain phenomena in different situations. So this is a nice message together with this general framework for transversal competencies. So I hope that I have introduced some basic ideas, but I'm sure that there is a lot of questions and a lot of discussions are needed in order to orient to that directions. For us, it has taken many years to think about those issues and make things working in practice. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lavoven, for your meaningful and comprehensive presentation and shared invaluable experience, especially about how to improve the transversal skills based on the leading world research experience. Much appreciated. Also, its role on curriculum development in terms of different grades and fields. Also, we always appreciate your multidimensional support as a well-known scientist and the education policymaker in the range of areas of education in the globe. Thank you. We wish all the best in the future cooperation and your activities. Thank you. Now we can move to the next presentation. The next presentation will be presented by the Professor Ms. Riley Hilden about how to teach or the methods of teaching foreign language in Finland. Ms. Hilden, over to you, please.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and right, yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. I think this was more or less my only Uzbek word so far, but I feel very honored to be invited as a speaker here to tell you something about the methodology of teaching foreign languages in my country. So I will first check the technical part. Do you want me to show the whole as a whole screen, or can you see it as it is? Is it better now? Can you see the whole screen now?
Demonstration has not started yet.
Okay. First, to give a short outline of my presentation, so the things I will talk about, I try to be brief, even if I tend to be a bit talkative, but I know that I only have like half an hour to stick to. So first, I will tell you a few words about language teaching, how it was before and how it looks like now. Why we teach languages, where we do it, and when, at what ages. Well, of course, the basic reason for a very rich variety of language teaching in Finland is that we have a very rare language. Nobody except Estonians on the other side of the Finnish Bay understand us without a translation. So we are aware of that, and we have always known that we need to know foreign languages to be able to socialize with the rest of the world. Then I will give you some guidelines of the national core curricula for basic and general upper secondary education. So what are we aiming to teach? And I must thank my colleague Jari here for giving a very excellent broad view about the basic ideas framing our curricula, because they are very important and they concern all subjects as much as scientific as linguistic subjects in our basic education and at all levels. Then there will be a practical insight to the methods and practices that we use in teaching, the mainstream ways of language didactical practices of today, a few words about assessment, and then some trends to the future. What is kind of up that is novelties of today, and what we are going to do in the future. And then, of course, I will be glad to have some questions and discussion at the end. So in Finland, even if we know that we need foreign languages, so we have only had a proper school system in the last 100 years. Finland became an independent state in 1917, and then we got an elementary school act, but of course not everyone went to school at that time. We were an agro country, agro society, and people needed to stay at home working instead of going to school. And foreign languages were only taught to the upper class, those being able to study at grammar schools, which were costly, and they needed a lot of money to attend those schools. Well, after the Second World War, we got a lot of changes. Of course, as all societies, there was an increasing need for skilled labor, being proficient in languages as well. There was a baby boom, and also a demand of equality as a Nordic welfare state. And instead of German, that had been very important and prominent before the war, English gained more importance after the war. And the very breaking year for Finnish education was 1972, when we got the Comprehensive Basic Education Act instead of the dual system. So everyone could go to the same kind of school, and foreign languages were taught to all. The second domestic language, Swedish or Finnish, depending on what you have as mother tongue, and the most famous or popular language tended to be English from that time on. 1995, we became a member of EU, and at that time we also adopted a lot of Council of Europe frameworks and goals and programs, as Jari also mentioned in his presentation. So English today is the major language for young people because of popular media, but also for the whole society because of trade and science. And we all know that we need to know English, but we want to keep up with other languages because they are needed in Europe. And we also need more of global languages like Chinese, Arabic, and Japanese, so that those languages we don't know enough about yet. And here is the Finnish education system, and in the orange color you can see the languages, how languages are taught and at what levels. So we already start from very early age. There are immersion daycares, kindergartens where where they can have languages or so-called language showers, so they play and sing and do nice things in other languages. Then in basic education we have many languages to choose, but the reality is that the first advanced syllabus tends to be in English, and we started at the first grade at the age of 7 at the latest, and then you can choose optional languages later on. The only compulsory or mandatory language to take is the second national language, Swedish for Finnish speakers and Finnish for Swedish speakers, speaker population in the country. And then in upper secondary, you continue with the same languages, or you can take some more optional. In matriculation examination, that is the only high stakes exam that we have in Finland. There you need to take an exam in one foreign language, and usually that is English. And many of our students also want to graduate in the second domestic language. And then in higher education studies, tertiary studies, there are language studies in one foreign language and second national language. And of course, in liberal adult education, you can also study languages as you wish. So about once in 10 years, we write a national core curriculum and renew it and revise it. And the latest version of the curricula that are operative right now are those from 2019 for upper secondary and 2014 for basic education. And as Jari mentioned, so in the basic education curricula, we have a lot of terms and concepts referring to the transversal global competencies, like language education instead of language teaching, multilingualism, multiliteracy, transversal competencies as expressively given a term is there many times. So as I mentioned, so we have the European background, the European language policies, EU and European Council language policies have had a great impact on our foreign language studies. And perhaps the most known way of that impact is the scale that we use, the European scale that depicts language proficiency from a very low elementary stage of limited communication in most familiar situations, like a greeting and asking for a cup of coffee and things like that, up to C1 or C2 actually, which is the last European level, meaning that you talk more or less like a native speaker of that language, and everything there in between. So this is the scale that we have used. We have adopted for the Finnish school system to illustrate and spell out what exactly you need to know after each stage of education. And that has been very useful. And the first adoption of this scale came in 2003, and now we have remained it up to these days, and I guess it will still continue to live. So the goals of language education that we are aiming at are listed here. So we have a lot of cultural issues to pay attention to. We also want people to learn language learning skills and strategies, because it's not throughout their lives that the teacher is looking after them or the parents. They need to stand on their own feet to be able to learn other languages when they need them. But of course, we also have those linguistic core skills, like being able to understand what you hear, to understand what you read, and to be able to write and speak and write. But we also aim at multiliteracy, where text is understood in a very broad sense, not only as language or words or characters, but also the languages of signs, symbols, and pictures. Well, here we have those goal components, interaction skills, and text interpretation and production skills. And here are the European levels, ranging from A1 to C1. These are the major European scale levels, which we have divided into sub levels, but I won't go into that right now. But what I want to demonstrate with this table is that, for example, here at the end of basic education, the average target level of language English language education advanced syllabus is B11, which means that you can safely go to an area, to an environment where English is used, and you can cope with the everyday life there. And at the end of upper secondary education, you are at level B21 in average. And that means that you can already move to another country for work or education, for example, to study in another country in the English language. So that's a much more higher and abstract level of language use. So this is how we use these scales and how we manage our foreign language curricula. Well, I will not go into the transversal competencies much more, because Jari already presented them to you, but all those cross-curricular 21st century skills also embrace the language, foreign language education. And they are in the same way, they are targeted, they are aligned with the content areas as they are in science and in other school subjects. And this is the corresponding figure for upper secondary education. The same background is there, the global skills, but they are grouped in a slightly different way. Those 3 sections are for like individual, at the individual level, while the 3 others are more referring to the level of society, as societal competencies, and global as well. Well, then to the very concrete way of how we teach, for example, prospective language teachers. So I am a professor in associate professor in language didactics, which means that I teach prospective language teachers in teaching. What should they do in the classroom? How should they plan their teaching, and how should they implement the curriculum, and also rewrite it and recreate the curriculum and interpret that curriculum. So usually we have like the very core, and this is something that you may recall from your own school days, the grammar tradition, the forms. You need to know the words. You need to be able to give the tenses of a verb, for example. But it's language teaching is not only that, because you may recall, as I recall from my school times, so it is very boring if you only work with writing, you only have the book and you only fill in the prepositions and the verbs and stuff like that. That's not nice. So the next phase that a teacher needs to take into account is that the use of language needs to be communicative. So for example, in teaching materials in your country and in mine, there are a lot of like tasks that they give you, like 2 roles. You are the one who is attending the cafe. You need a cup of coffee, and what do you say, and what does the waitress say? So play that dialogue. Okay, that's already a bit better. It's not only forms, but actually that is not really reality that either. What you really need, and if we want to take somehow consider the transversality of and the growth towards coping in the real world, you need to apply your language proficiency in real situations. And this is something that we might call scenarios, so that they come close to the real life. For example, prepare an imaginary tour in Tashkent for a foreign school class that is coming to see you. Okay, no one is coming, but you are like prepared. You can play like this. This is how it would look like. These are the buildings I would them to see. These are the activities we would give together when they come here. And the last and the highest stage of language proficiency or language teaching is that it is aligned with the real world. So you really have a friend school or a partner school somewhere, and those guys are coming to Tashkent, and you give those little presentations, and you take them to nice places you know about. And that could be like one way of implementing transversal competencies, because then you have interaction, then you have all that stuff that is not possible only in one language class. Of course, you need to know the language, so you need the whole staircase. But actually, what we are aiming at is the real world, the real life. So to make that onion to bloom takes activity at multiple levels, of course. Practices date back to multiple times, and I will show you briefly another figure showing what we have. But in a practical schoolwork, we also have a few steps that we tend to apply or recommend to future teachers. So actually here, I'm not going very, very closely to this. I could give a series of lectures of this particular picture, which I have done for my poor students. But you can, I won't do that with you, but you can see that we have like the traditional grammatical focus, and then we have the more communicative, and then the task-based, action-based, or project-based as in sciences. The ideas are the same, so that it's like broadening towards the real world, the contents of your school subjects. And everything is visible in classrooms today. So what we learn then is that you first, as a language teacher, you should try to motivate to take your students to situations where they really are going to use, or they need that language that is being taught. Not just like asking, okay, take your books and open the page number, this and that. No one is interested in that kind of work, actually. Were you when you were school kids? I doubt. But what would perhaps be a better way would be that you show them a situation, or you ask them to recall some situation in their lives that they have noticed that, okay, I would have needed some English, but I didn't have that stuff, and now I'm here to learn it. I think I don't really have time for showing this video, but what I could try to do it, because this video is a script from a very important phase in Finnish students' life. It's about becoming or graduating from the upper secondary education, which is like after the matriculation exam, and that's something that is kind of exciting perhaps to you, because after the graduation they take, so they will have white caps, and they will see, and it will look like, well, this is not the right, sorry, I had it somewhere, but now I lost it. Okay, so no, it's not the right one. Sorry. I think that I will skip this because it's not really what I want to show to you. So I will share the PowerPoint again. Right. So maybe at the end we can look at the video. But then if you have been at the celebration of this kind before, so how would you tell about this to your English friend, or to your French friend, or someone that speaks another language? And then you raise the motivation of learning these things. Did I lose my whole screen now? Okay. So I'm quite sure what I'm sharing right now. So yes, I'm trying to get back to there. No, I think I need to stop for a while. Sorry. Okay. And now I'm trying to move on, but it won't. Well, it's kind of dead. Okay, let's, it's somewhere here, I guess, that I should. Well, anyway, I think you can see the next phase here. So then after that video or some memorizing, you go into the text that you are going to study. And there it's also important that you try to use the language that you are learning. For example, speaking in it and explaining words and elaborating, doing sentences of the new words, asking and responding to questions, so that it's not just reading, because oral proficiency is very important. So they should be able to talk the language instead of only read. And then the next phase, which is perhaps even more important, is that they are able to apply their linguistic knowledge, so that they will do something else with the same words, with the same sentences that they are learning. It's not important who does what in the learning material, but it's important that these young people can use that vocabulary, those grammar items, and those things in their real life. And what is also very focal in language teaching is the quality of homework. And here we get in, for example, the digital competencies. So that it's not the homework should not be only writing that either, but they can like visit websites. For example, in English, we have a lot of material, and in other languages as well, that they could visit some website and report it. They could see a film, they could listen to some songs, or make own multimedia presentations as well, so that not only look what others have done, so that they should be active users of that multimedia or that digital devices, digital resources as well. And in many schools, we have a learning platform where they can post their own work and share them with their peers and watch what the others have done or written. So that will give the language more alive touch. It is like in the real life. So in this way, the task supported, the grammar and language-centered use of language will brought up to a project that also has use in their real life. So there I will skip to the evaluation part. Then it's also of a great importance that that the students can evaluate their own work, that they can control it and plan ahead. So that this was how I learned these things, and this was my output for this round. But next time I will learn, I will do it a bit better, for example. And then all these reflections and those notifications could be stored in a learning portfolio. And I also have a kind of model of that. Here is a set of principles of good teaching, good language teaching, but perhaps also in general, what you should do. So you should, as a teacher, a language teacher, activate all students during your lessons. And remember that the core of the lesson is the student, not the teacher. As a teacher, you know how to speak that language, but the pupils do not. And those, it's for them, not for the teacher to stand there and talk all the time. And you should also offer a diversity of task types and assessment practices. Not everyone is talkative, not everyone is prepared to present in front of others. Then you might take that pupil to some corner and talk to him or her in private to see how well he or she speaks that language, or the oral proficiency. And it's also very useful to develop students' sense of responsibility, as I said. So we are aiming at the lifelong learning and the lifelong learning competence, and then it's the students who is in charge primarily, not the teacher. We should also be tolerant of students' mistakes, not to take them as they are wrong, but trying to learn from them. What doesn't she or he know because she makes that kind of mistake? And developing students' self-confidence, learning them, teaching them learning strategies, and also trying to support the students from a very early stage. As soon as you find out, you notice that there is something wrong or some difficulties around, then you should grab them. And promote students' awareness of languages around them, not just in the school books. Encourage students' collaboration, mutual cooperation, and practice accuracy and fluency in a balanced way. In everyday life, it's not so important if all the forms are accurate. You still can get your message across if you are willing to communicate and fluent enough to do that. And in the first place, you should remember students' needs and targets of interest, so that they would share our aims. Well, assessment should also be in line with the learning goals. And as I already mentioned, so we give the target levels for each syllabus by the scale. And at the operative core curricula, the formative assessment, like the assessment during studies, is very heavily stressed. So it's important with feedback from teacher, of course, but also from peers and for every pupil to be able to assess what I have done, what I should improve, because that's the best way that matters. If someone just tells you you should this and that, and you just you couldn't care, so it's not effective. But if you find out if you can understand it yourself, so that will make you a way to the better. And summative assessment is, of course, focal also at the end of the final stage of the studies at the end of basic education. But as already was mentioned in the previous presentation, so in Finland, teachers have a great deal of autonomy. So we don't imply high stakes exams until at the end of upper secondary. So that's our teachers are very free in a way. And here is the link to the matriculation examination pages or the website. So as a glance to the future, we have a lot of the European implications or the European influences. So we have the language portfolio and language profile that is a kind of adaptation from that. But then we also have some inventions of our own, like digital gaming. There are projects that are utilizing digital games for language teaching. And then we also have brain scientists who have done a lot of research on, for example, how music affects, how it improves language learning. And we also apply technology in assessment or we are on the way of doing that. For example, I myself am leading the project called Digitala, which is developing a digital tool for assessing automatically speaking a foreign language. And then we also encourage our students to use authentic environments and to lower the border between language use outside of school and in class. And the latest novelty that we have introduced is the early language learning, that we are studying languages, or it's like mandatory to start language teaching at the age of 7 at the first grade. And here I guess that my video was kind of trying to be that we could have a brief look at the small kids learning English for a while, if I'm now successful in sharing that video. Let me see. So it was this one, your first steps on your language path. This is from a school in the metropolitan area. No, metropolitan, no, it's in Turku. But okay, let's see.
A1-kieli alkaa ekaluokkalaisella lapsella jo heti.
They start this language in the very first grade.
Alkaa myös kielen opiskelu.
At the same time as they start their mother tongue.
Kielen opiskeluun on tarkoitus perustua toistoon,
this is about repetition, speaking,
playing,
listening, activities. We want to pay attention to the age of the small children and their interests. And with the activity-based pedagogy, learning from books is not so important. They don't have any books at the very beginning. English tends to be the most popular language that they start, but municipalities have different policies. Everybody is entailed to start at the first grade, but they also can have another language. It's only 1 hour in a week.
Aika lailla puhtaasti sen kielen opiskelua.
Okay, and I think that it was enough for me. Thank you very much for being able to join you, and I welcome your questions and reflections. So,
thank you, Ms. Hilden, for your knowledgeable presentation with rich, different, relevant information about specifics of language teaching, and also your contribution and kind consent for sharing your experience with Uzbek colleagues. Highly appreciated. And as you mentioned, our cooperation needs to be continued systematically without non-stop, and we always appreciate and welcome your and Mr. Lavovan's visiting to our country. We much appreciate to see you, all of you here in reality very soon. Thank you. As you have mentioned, after such kind of comprehensive presentations, we have more questions, more thoughts. So we can move to the next session, to the session questions and answers. Demak, prezentatsiyalardan so'ng ekspertlarimizga, ishtirokchilarimizdan ko'plab savollar borligi ma'lum bo'ldi. İlk savol navbati ta'lim inspeksiyasi vakillariga beriladi. Marhamat, Abdurahim Nosirov, savollaringizni yo'llashingiz mumkin ekspertlarga. Sanjar studiyani mikrofoni yoqilmayapti. Abdurahim aka, sizni eshitamiz.
Eshitilyaptimi aka?
Eshitilyapti.
Hurmatli ma'ruzachilarimizga minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. Biz oldingi uchrashuvlarda bergan ko'pgina savollarimizga deyarli bugun ikkita ma'ruzachidan ham ancha javoblar oldik. Shunday bo'lsa-da baribir yana bir qator vazifalar oldimizga qo'yilyapti. Mana birinchi savolim tabiiy fanlar bo'yicha Lavonin janoblariga minnatdorchilik bildirgan holda 7 ta transversal kompetensiyaning darsliklarda qanday aks etishi to'g'risida ozgina tushuncha bersa va u kompetensiyalar qachon, qanday va kim tomonidan baholanishini qisqacha gapirib bersa. Bu savol chet tillariga ham taalluqli. Shuningdek, chet tili bo'yicha ma'ruzachimizga savolimni davomi sifatida umumiy o'rta ta'lim qismida chet tillarini sinflar kesimida soatlar hajmini iloji bo'lsa aytib bersa, 1-sinfdan 6-sinfgacha boshlang'ich haftasiga necha martadan birinchi chet tilini, necha martadan ikkinchi chet tilini o'rganadi, 7-9 sinflarda va maktabning yuqori sinflarida. Ana shu kesimda Yevropa kompetensiyasining talablari bor, sefr deyiladi. Bizda O'zbekistonda A1 darajadan oliy ta'lim yakunida C1 darajagacha standartlarimizda bu joriy etilgan. Mana shuni Finlandiya standartlaridagi mutanosibligini bilmoqchi edik. Ya'ni 6-sinfni bitirganda umumiy o'rta ta'limning birinchi chet tili bo'yicha qaysi darajaga, A1 mi, A2 mi yoki 9-sinfni bitirganda qaysi darajada yoki undan keyingi 3 yillik ta'limning yakunida birinchi chet tili bo'yicha qaysi urovenda talab qo'yiladi, ikkinchi chet tili bo'yicha qaysi darajada bu talablar qo'yiladi. Rahmat.
Should I start? Should I kind of start? Oh, Yari, is it okay that I start? Okay. While
Yes, Miss Hilden, you can start.
Right. Yeah. Yes, we have those like annual weekly hours. So together during the basic education, we have 18 yearly weekly hours for the advanced, the first language, the first syllabus. And then our, sorry, I don't recall them by heart. I could check it for you how they are delivered by delivered according to the lower classes from 1 to 6, and then the upper classes from 7 to 9, but together there are 18 in the first language. And for the optional optional first language, it's depending on the school and the municipality what they offer. And the European level or the curricular target level for A1 is the B11 in English, and in other A languages if they exist. So it's like a one sub scale step lower, like A22, but A1 B11 in English, and it's across all the skills. And then for the second domestic language, Swedish for Finns and Finnish for Swedes, the level is lower, is just A13 or something around there. So it's not very high, because the hours dedicated to the second domestic language is only 6, and it starts from grade 6. But in the advanced syllabus, we have 18 hours. And the level B11. Did I respond to your question?
Abdurrahman aka, savolingizga javob ola oldingizmi?
Okay, it's my turn. Now my microphone
go
is
ahead.
unmuted.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So
Yes.
how the transversal competencies are emphasized in the textbooks, that was the question, first question. So it's maybe more about the activities. The textbooks and the teachers are guiding students to different kind of activities. They are guided to use the text, analyze the text. They are guided to plan something. They are guided to project-based learning, I emphasized, but also the assignment. So I can give an example. So, okay, I'm not able to share my screen, but anyway, if earlier we were asking the more conceptual knowledge, a little bit procedural knowledge, maybe we are more orienting to the procedural knowledge. For example, there is a phenomena in the assignment, a picture or even a video clip. Nowadays we have a lot of digital learning materials, a video clip, and the students could be guided to ask relevant questions about the phenomena they are able to see, and then based on the questions plan also investigation, how to make sense of the phenomena. So it is switch from the more conceptual to the more procedural type of knowledge. And this is also in the assessment. In Finland, we are not having high-stake testing, only in the end of upper secondary school, but the teachers are main actors in assessment. And this means that the formative and informal assessment is important. When the students are engaging the project type of learning, they might go to the student group and for example, asking what you have done until now, what is the question you are looking an answer, what is your evidence, what is your claim, how you argue based on the evidence that the claim is like that. So this kind of scaffolding, informal assessment together with the scaffolding. And again, of course, the test items which are used in summative assessment, they should be more orienting to the working with the text, working with the data. In our only high-stake examination, the matriculation examination in the end of upper secondary school, it is totally digitalized text test. And there is the possibility to have the video clips and text and many type of information available for students. And the test assignments are guiding students then to work with the text, make evidence-based conclusions. So Riley and I, we are working in this examination board, and actually we are very heavily now thinking and planning the test items in order to better meet this measuring of the transversal competencies. So there are not not so much ready answers. This is also the process. We are very much working now, and we have recognized the challenge and we have some ideas. So this is shortly. So the learning material is important, but but it is more changing to the guiding students to be more active. So we can say that active reading, collaborative reading, reciprocal reading, and also combining writing to the reading. They are the way how we can support students to learn and also measure those learning of the transversal competencies.
And I put in the chat the division of the annual hours. So during the first 2 grades, we have 2 hours, and then 9 and then 7, so that you can. Sorry, I misspelled some words there, but there is a specific division of the hours. And the same applies for foreign language materials as well, even if they are perhaps more guided by the European level thinking than by transversal competencies. But I think that languages as subjects are of the kind that some of the things come quite naturally, for example, interaction and social skills and such things, so that they are more and more considered in all the phases of teaching, also with regard to teaching materials and assessment, as you well put it.
Thank you so much for the detailed information. Well received. Studiyalarda savollar bormi? Chunki ishtirokchilarimiz soni 300 ga yaqin. Ular orasida qo'l ko'targanlar ko'p. Agar studiyalarda savollar bo'lmasa, u holda o'qituvchilarga yuzlanamiz. Nafisa, familiyangizni yozmabsiz. 3-ixtisoslashgan davlat umumta'lim maktabidan. Sizga savol yo'llash uchun ruxsat beramiz. Organizatorimiz Sanjar.
Bir xil bilib bilmasdan ham qo'lini ko'taryapti, lekin mikrofon yoqdim, ular o'zlari yoqishmadi mikrofonni.
Chat orqali yo'llangan savol bor. Nizomjon Karimov nomlaridan, Milliy markaz jamoasidan. Demak, savol. Abduqodir Karimberdiyev from National Center. Thank you very much for the information. We would like to know about teaching foreign languages in class practical experience of Finland education system. Class size, number of students, methods of teaching, working with different difficult students, foreign language classes per a week, type of assessment. They are asking detailed information, such kind of questions, questions.
Well, yes, they are very important questions and interesting indeed, but of course beyond the scope of this time to reply quite in depth. But about the class size, we have a kind of recommended and also practical class size of 20 to 25 in basic education. Jari, correct me if I say something wrong, because I know that you are better in the administrative part. But I think it's something around that.
Maybe in science a little bit smaller, but in general it's 20-25. Yeah.
Because usually, for example, in the advanced syllabus, first language, they tend to give the whole class, and then the number, method of teaching. Well, I gave you a very brief glance into how the regular run or the regular course of teaching usually goes, depending on the age, of course. And we're working with difficult students is, of course, a challenge, but we have the like the guiding principle in Finnish school education is like inclusion, so that we don't want to exclude those pupils that are kind of challenging, but we want to keep them in the same class and add staff to these classes. We have school assistants, we have special teachers. Unfortunately, the number of them is not really sufficient everywhere, but that's the aim is that that they are there to help the students out without excluding them to other localities or other schools as it used to be in the past. So dyslexia and behavioral problems and things like that. The classes per week, so they are break down according to the numbers that I wrote to the chat. So usually in upper classes, it's like 3 hours in a week, approximately. But now we also have like the period or course-based way of teaching in many basic education schools. So it may vary according to that. So you may have a period like when one study year is break up to 5 periods, for example. So you may have in one period you may have like English every day, but then the next period you don't have it at all. So it depends on the local solutions of the schedule. Types of assessment. So we have course exams and course tests. They are not standardized in a way than in many countries, but they are teacher-made basically, and also teachers' associations publish their test packages or kind of exercise and task packages that teachers may use if they are members in those associations. But usually teachers write themselves and assess them by themselves. And formative assessment is very much brought to the forefront, and also the diversity of assessment methods, so that it's not only test, far from that. It's like more the ongoing development, following up how the student is working forward on toward the goals, and the importance of tests is reducing. Of course, at the end of and when they are assigned their final grade, there need to be some summative evidence because the grades need to be given on equal basis. And we have also worked out a new set of grade descriptions to precise and to make it more reliable across the country. Now we have descriptions for on a grade from ranging from 4 to 10. We have descriptions for grade 5, grade 7 and 8 and 9, so that they are much more precise and specific now than they used to be before, like a year ago and earlier.
Ekspertlarimizga savollarimizga berilayotgan to'liq va mazmunli javoblar uchun o'z minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz va navbatdagi savolga yuzlanamiz. Navbatdagi savol: Jizzax viloyati Annasoy tumani xalq ta'limi bo'limi metodistidan savol shundan iboratki, savol professor Lavovinga yuborilgan. Bizga 7 ta kompetensiya haqida to'liq ma'lumot berilsa, ya'ni har bir kompetensiya nomlarini bilmoqchi edim.
Can you please repeat the question?
Mr. Lavovin, they are asking detailed information about the 7 transversal skills, at least the name of the skills or competences.
Can I share the screen?
Yes.
Good. So I can take it. So it is disabled to share the screen. So I think it's easier to show the answer. If you can give me the right to share.
If I'm not mistaken, the name of the skills has been written on the presentations in detail. Yeah. So later on, we can share your presentation with your permission. Okay.
Maybe I can give them. Yeah, maybe I can give a comment on that. So there are 7 transversal competencies. The first one is for thinking and learning to learn, use of metacognition. So the teachers should support the creative and critical type of thinking. Then is a cultural competence. So there are basically in our school we have a lot of art education subjects, and so the cultural competence is general. But you can also combine, for example, to language education or even science education. You can combine cultural competence learning. And then the safety, self-care, safety, everyday management, that's important in science, the safety in electricity, safety in heat and many chemicals, and that's like. Multiliteracy means that you have to be able to read different kind of text. You have to understand your reading. You have to engage in working with the text. You have to be able to produce different kind of text. The use of information and communication technology is important, so those skills, competencies, students have to learn. We have quite a good infrastructure in digital world, and students have access to the computers. The upper secondary school is totally digitalized, so in every lesson, students are using the digital tools, and in the assessment, all the assessments are made by digital tools. The working life skills, so connection to the real life, visits to the working life, they are important. Participation, so this kind of sustainable future and participation to making that's really crucial, the climate change and preventing of that. And these 7, you can read from the slides, they are almost the same. European Union is emphasizing to member states. They are quite close to OECD models, but described in a little bit different way.
Thank you, Mr. Lavoven. Just a comment for my colleagues. Demak, mana shu savol egasi bizga chatga kontaktlaringizni qoldirsangiz, Mr. Lavovenning prezentatsiyasini sizga yuboramiz. Ana undan keyin ham qo'shimcha savollaringiz bo'lsa, aloqa o'rnatishga yordam beramiz. Keyingi savol. Umumta'lim maktablarida fizika, kimyo va biologiya fanlaridan yiliga necha soat dars o'tiladi va laboratoriya darslari taxminan necha foizni tashkil qiladi? Rahmat.
So I have this information in my presentation. So if we calculate the total hours during the 9-year compulsory education, we have 30 hours for all science subjects, physics, chemistry, biology, geography. And this means that in 1 week, there is about, for physics, about 2 or 3 lessons, for chemistry, 2 or 3 lessons. But as Professor Hilde mentioned, that we have the more course type of structure in our curriculum. So there could be a 6-week period, even in lower secondary school. Students are having every day science, like physics. And then there is a next period, there is no science. So this is supportive for making the kind of long-term project type of working. You have enough lesson hours for doing that kind of work. So that's the idea. And in big picture, 1/3 of the lessons are for language, 1/3 is for math, science, and history, social science, and ethics, and 1/3 is for art, music, visual art, craft. That's the big picture. All areas of human being should be developed in compulsory education.
Thank you, Mr. Lavovin. We will move to the next question. Finlandiyada o'qituvchilarning malakasini oshirish sistemasi qanday shakllarda yo'lga qo'yilgan?
I just recently write a book chapter about in-service training. So in Finland, we are willing to use, instead of in-service training, teachers' professional learning. And this teachers' professional learning should be continuous and collaborative. Officially, in our legislation or agreement between the teacher union and the employee union, it has decided that officially there are 3 days for a year, kind of formal in-service training. However, we call schools as learning communities, and there is a lot of activities teachers are engaged, like making the new curriculum, preparing new learning environments, and this kind of teachers' projects, they are supportive for professional learning. So it is not possible to discuss about formal in-service training. It is more like a kind of continuous professional learning community which is supporting teachers for their learning. Of course, there is also available strategic money. If we have been emphasizing, for example, the use of digital tools in teaching and learning. And some 100 euro, maybe about that size, has been allocated for providers of education, municipalities, for organizing more heavy support for teachers' learning. And a couple of years ago, some 3 years ago, there was a new initiative for supporting teachers' professional learning. We call it Tutor teacher model. A tutor teacher is teaching in a school, but he is having less hours than other teachers, for example, half of the lesson hours. And then the tutor teacher is going to the classroom of other teacher. And a tutor teacher is supporting teacher to engage in this kind of teaching and learning, which is supportive for learning the transversal competencies, and also how to use those digital tools in teaching and learning. This tutor teacher model is very effective, and all schools have that kind of teachers now. That was funded by the state and also by the municipalities. So it's a huge variation how we support teachers to learn those professional competencies they need in new situations. But it's a big question and not easy to answer shortly. So there are so many ways how we can do it, and we are doing it.
Thank you very much, Professor. In order not to make an extra effort for you and for your colleagues, we are trying to accumulate the questions. Now, I will tell you the last question according to the chat-based questions. Aksariyat metodistlarimiz va o'qituvchilarimiz tomonidan yo'llangan savollarning mazmuni shundan iboratki, Finlandiyada o'qitish texnologiyasi va uning samaradorligi qanday baholanadi?
Is this question about technology as a kind of content area or educational technology? Which one? So technology teaching or use of education technology.
Ta'lim texnologiyasi metodikasi nuqtai nazaridan.
Okay. So
Ta'lim texnologiyasi haqida ma'lumot olmoqchiman. O'qitilish usullari, sifat ko'rsatkichlari qanday degan savollar bor bizda.
So now I understand the question is about use of education technology in teaching in all subjects. Okay, first, our curriculum emphasizes that teachers should guide students in activities where they can use technology in interpreting data and text, understanding the text. They should be active in creative use of education technology for generating ideas or designing a robot, or so both critical and creative type of activities are used with the education technology, computers and other digital tools. Then the curriculum is emphasizing the collaboration. The students are active together with the use of the technology. And then the curriculum is emphasizing the kind of producing something, an artifact. They are working together. It could be for example, the mind map in science lesson. It could be the report or scientific model. Or they can make a measurement from the environment. They can use the microcomputer-based lab for making the measurements. So there are this kind of guidelines that it should be creative, critical, collaboration, artifacts. So that is emphasized. In primary and lower secondary, we are having national follow-up studies, how teachers are using technology. And as a part of these follow-up studies, there are also competence tests for teachers and students. They are made based on a representative sample. They are not testing, they are sample-based monitoring. And according to latest, it was financed by the Ministry of Education, about half of the teachers evaluate and also demonstrate the competence in the test that they were advanced users of digital tools. And other half were kind of basic users. And students' use of digital tools was also tested, and it was in quite high level. In international comparative studies, Finnish 15-year-old students have typically been ranked among the 3 best countries. South Korea is very high, Denmark, Finland, they are typically the highest in the use of digital technology, and the competencies, how the digital technology is used. In upper secondary school, I have already mentioned, and Riley also, that we have the final examination computer-based. This means that all the test assignments are made with the computer. So how to use computer, how to analyze data, how to produce new text, how to make different kind of things with the computers with a creative and critical way. That is measured in the final examination. So it is included to the final examination. And nowadays, schools, upper secondary schools, they are using also in the course and school-based assessment this same environment. So the digital tools are used in assessment activities all the time. So shortly, there are national monitoring. We know what the teachers and students are able to do, what are the competencies, how often they are using it, and there is the part of the assessment they are used. So they are integrated to the assessment activities. But it's also important the curriculum is in line with the activities, and the assessment, of course, in line with the curriculum. I can give some references related to this use of how the use of technology is measured and how it is done. So if there's interest about this topic.
Rahmat janob Lavovin batafsil tushuntirishlar va savollarga berilgan javoblar uchun. Umid qilamizki, qo'shimcha savollarga va ishtirokchilarni qiziqtirgan qo'shimcha ma'lumotlarga yo'l-yo'lakay, ya'ni ishchi rejimida sizlardan keyinchalik yana javoblar olishga harakat qilamiz. Hozir esa bugungi seminar haqidagi fikr va taassurotlaringizni bo'lishishingiz uchun so'nggi so'zni ekspertlarimizga beramiz. Marhamat, Mr. Lavovin, Miss Hilden, so'z sizga.
So you asked me to make some concluding, okay? So I think it was interesting in the beginning, the director of the State Inspectorate was analyzing the situation in Uzbekistan and also outlining the aims, what should be done in Uzbekistan. I was listening carefully and I understand that the aims are really similar to what we have had in Finland. So you should, and we all should holistically look the curriculum, how to develop the curriculum. It better take into account the transversal competencies, also in subject level, so how each subject, school subject, is taking into account the transversal competencies. Then I'm sure that is important, the learning materials and the digital learning environments, they are in line with the aims in the curriculum. And finally, the assessment should be developed highly, and we were emphasizing the informal formative assessment. It is better taking into account holistically the whole big spectrum of the transversal competencies. If we are only focusing to the testing type of assessment, which is more or less measuring the memorizing and simple cognitive tasks, so it is not easy to measure those transversal competencies. You have to combine the formative and summative assessment, and they should be in line. And finally, the inspectorate, the director, emphasized the teachers, the competence of teachers. We should holistically take a look for all those areas and support teachers to understand the meaning of transversal competencies, where they are coming, how they are emphasized also in other countries, how they can in a classroom, and now we come to most important, how the teacher can in a classroom emphasize the learning of those transversal competencies in his teaching and student learning activities, and also the assessment in line with those activities. So it looks that we are very much thinking the same, and I can see there are a lot of possibilities for fruitful discussions and collaboration. Thank you for this possibility to join the meeting today.
Thank you, Mr. Lavovin, for your kind words and multidimensional support in this space. Ms. Hilden, please share your thoughts and feedbacks of today's seminar. Demak, bugungi seminarimizni samarali va seminarimizdan kutilgan natijalarga erishdik deb umid qilamiz. Bugungi tadbirimizni rasman yakunlab berishlari uchun so'z navbatini Vazirlar Mahkamasi huzuridagi ta'lim sifatini nazorat qilish Davlat inspeksiyasi boshlig'ining o'rinbosari Qo'ysinov Odil Almuratovичga beramiz. Marhamat, Odil Almuratovich, so'z sizga. Mikrofon yoqilmayapti. Yoqildi.
Yoqildimi? Demak, birinchi navbatda faxriy konsulimiz Alisher Jo'rayevga va Finlandiya davlati Helsinki universiteti professori janob Lavonin va Hilden xonimlarga o'z minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. Men o'ylaymanki, Finlandiya tajribasidagi mana shu o'quv me'yoriy hujjatlar, o'qitish metodikasi, mana kompetensiyalar haqida berilgan ma'lumotlar biz uchun juda ham muhim bo'ldi. Va albatta biz hozirgi tayyorlayotgan milliy o'quv dasturlari, uzluksiz ta'lim tizimidagi barcha o'quv dasturlaridagi yangiliklarni ulardan qiyosiy tahlil qilamiz va o'qitish metodikasini rivojlantirishda hamkorlik aloqalarini bog'laymiz degan umiddamiz. Shuning uchun men o'ylaymanki, bu uchrashuvimiz dastlabkisi bo'ladi. Aynan ta'lim tizimini takomillashtirish, mana shu ta'lim tizimidagi o'qitish jarayonidagi tajribalarimizni bir-birimizdan tajriba almashgan holda bir-birimizga kerakli bo'lgan ma'lumotlarni berish ikki davlat fuqarolari uchun, ikki davlat ta'lim tizimi uchun men o'ylaymanki samarali bo'ladi. Bugungi seminar uchun juda katta rahmat. Sog' bo'linglar, salomat bo'linglar. Barcha ishtirokchilarni qimmatli vaqtlarni ayirmasdan ishtirok etganlar uchun o'z tashakkurimizni bildiramiz. Va tarjimonlarimizga ham o'z tashakkurimizni bildiramiz. Juda ham yaxshi sinxron tarjima qilib berishdi va tashkilotchilarga, Madinaxonga o'z tashakkurimizni bildiramizki, mana shunday seminarlarimiz bardavom bo'lsa, men o'ylaymanki, ta'lim jarayonimiz yanada takomillashishga, sifatli ta'minlashga erishamiz deb o'ylayman. Hammaga rahmat, sog' bo'linglar.
Hammaga rahmat. Ishtirokchilarga alohida rahmat bizni diqqat bilan tinglaganlari uchun. Maxsus ma'ruzachilarimizga vaqtlarini ayamasdan o'z tajribalarini biz bilan bo'lishganligi uchun alohida rahmat. Umid qilamizki, bizni yaqindan hamkorligimiz kelgusida yanada keng doirada uzoq vaqtlar samarali davom etadi. Barchangizga rahmat. Xayr, salomat bo'ling. Keyingi